The announcement that Ashes of Creation will be available on Steam on December 11th sparked a wave of discussions, heated debates, and drama that spread far beyond the core game community. Content creators did not ignore this topic either. Many shared their thoughts and opinions on Intrepid's controversial decision. One of those videos was posted by Kira, and it caught my attention because it stood out for several reasons. As someone who hasn't just followed the project closely for years, but has also spent over 2,000 hours actually playing Ashes of Creation, I wanted to give you my perspective as a content creator in this niche and a hardcore player who sees the game from the inside. If you're new to the channel, I am Flanker, nice to meet you and welcome. Before watching video for the first time, I didn't really know much about Kira as a content creator. I briefly checked his channel, looked at the titles and thumbnails, saw a lot of words like dead, failure, scam, and my first reaction was basically, oh my god, here we go again. Not gonna lie, I expected another drama queen repeating whatever internet is shouting just to farm views. However, this turned out to be one of those cases where my first impression was wrong.
I recorded a video about Ashes and Steven's reputation and some things I wanted to clear up and my opinion on Ashes in general about 2 months ago, and I meant to release it, but originally I sent it to Steven to be like, these are some very serious things I'm talking about, have a look at it, tell me if there's anything you think is objectively factually untrue, tell me if you have any comment on this that you want to get out into the public and things of that nature.
Already at this point, literally 30 seconds into the video, I raised my eyebrows. Like, what? Someone actually took the time to listen to the other side and put in the effort to base his opinion on something more substantial than just empty noise?
I am kind of sick of the narrative on social media being so slanted in one direction or another. Nobody doing any fact checking, everyone just repeating whatever they want to believe, and then other people upvoting them and spreading these lies or these rumors or denying things that are objectively true. So I figured I'd come in, bring the receipts, tell you exactly what the case is, and then you can make your own determination instead of listening to people on social media who have a reason to lie or have a reason to misrepresent things.
I genuinely could not believe what I was hearing because I couldn't agree more. The way people handle, interpret, and share information on the internet is wild, to say the least. No wonder it's been figured out hundreds of years ago that information can be a powerful weapon, and today it spreads faster, louder, and with far less responsibility behind it.
But first, I want to talk about people's reaction to this and the general idea of who Steven is and what Steven has done, more importantly. Because people are of the opinion that Steven is the worst person on the planet and he's a piece of shit scammer who essentially went to people having chemotherapy for cancer and tried to sell them a miracle drug, like the classic snake oil salesman just preying on the weak and ruining people's lives. And that didn't happen. And I think some people posting this, if you were a public figure, you'd be getting sued, rightfully so, because you're saying some crazy shit with no fucking fact checking whatsoever. But also, there are people on the other side that are saying Steven did nothing at all, ever. Steven's the best person. Steven has addressed this. All he did was this little thing, and it's not a big deal.
Most people, unfortunately, don't do any fact-checking whatsoever because it requires time and at least some basic analytical skills. They see a screenshot, a clip, or a Reddit post, and suddenly it becomes truth. It doesn't matter whether the claim is accurate, wildly exaggerated, or taken completely out of context. If it fits the narrative someone wants to believe, that's good enough. And then it snowballs. One person repeats it, then another, then it all turns into an echo chamber, and before you know it, everyone is confidently stating things that have little to no connection to reality. People today sometimes love to make fun of older generations. You know, how could anyone be manipulated by newspapers, radio, or TV back then? How are they so easy to fool? The irony is that nothing has really changed. The tools are different, faster, and more accessible, but human nature is exactly the same.
This person posts, the only MMO I genuinely wish to completely fail. Steven is a scam artist, he deserves no success. And then of course people are like, as always, whenever this comes up, people are saying, what's he done? You know, what's really happened? And then this guy comes in, 140 net upvotes, which means people have upvoted this more than they've downvoted it, to the point where this is a relatively high comment. And he's wrong. If you go to this link, you'll see that Steven Sharif and his family, the Sharif family, are on there. SharifFamily.com, $7 million earned, present company Zango. This is undoubtedly true, like nobody's going to deny this. So he then says, Steven used to run an MLM company, not really true, but kind of true, and sell juice to cancer patients for the sole purpose of curing their cancer. This didn't happen. This is what's called in the legal world defamation. If you were a public figure, you should probably be sued for this, because there is no fucking charitability in this sentence that you could read it and be like, this is true-ish. Like, it's mostly wrong. There's so much controversy surrounding the guy that you could literally just Google his name. It's a shame you didn't do that, mate, because if you did, you'd probably have an idea of what you're talking about.
Every time I see something like this, I honestly don't know what surprises me more, the comment itself or the fact that 140 people upvoted it. In any case, the main reason why comments like this are common on the internet is that even if someone lies intentionally, in 99.9% of cases, there is zero consequence for it. Freedom of speech is a privilege, but unfortunately, it comes with a side effect: misinformation spreading like wildfire.
And obviously people are upvoting this, nobody's fact checking it. It's like what I talked about not long ago with the Ion 2 thing, where people just see something, say something, repeat the thing, nobody fact checks, everyone upvotes it, and then that becomes the truth. Because why would it not? There's nobody pushing back on it.
That thread was posted on the subreddit r/MMORPG, a place where it's often difficult to have a remotely meaningful conversation. And God forbid you write even a neutral comment about Ashes of Creation. There is a high chance you'll instantly be labeled a fanboy, a cultist, and downvoted into oblivion. To be fair, the comments Kira was referring to were eventually removed by the subreddit moderators, which, in my opinion, was the right move. I have absolutely no problem with people criticizing the game or the studio. I've done it myself many times, but criticism should at least be constructive and based on data or actual evidence.
Ashes of Creation, one of the reasons I stopped covering the game originally is because the community is fucking insufferable. It's one of the worst communities I've ever experienced. It makes Star Citizen look reasonable, right? Some of the firsts in content creation for me was taken, my virginity was taken by Ashes of Creation, because I'd make a video being like, yeah, I don't like this, I think it's bad, I don't agree that Steven's doing the greatest things here, I don't think Steven's the best thing since sliced bread. And it was the first ever time I'd like release a video and then go live on my Twitch stream, and then somebody would show up from Ashes of Creation, one of the community members, and repeatedly tell me they wanted me to die, and say some incredibly personal things that I talked about in videos that they could only know if they'd watched a bunch of my videos and knew a lot about me. And then I'd ban them, and they'd keep coming back over and over again for months and just harassing the fuck out of me for no reason other than I said I didn't have any interest in covering the game anymore for reasons we'll go into in this video.
Despite being a relatively small content creator, I can relate to the last part, since I also had the pleasure of encountering individuals with a lot of free time and Schrodinger's brain cells. It's not fun, but there is not much we can do about it. As for the Ashes of Creation community specifically, I'd probably disagree a little. Any online community with tens of thousands of people will inevitably have a certain percentage of morons with no manners and complete immunity to common sense. Does the Ashes community really stand out compared to others? Hard to say without some sort of measurable data. But one thing I can say for sure: if you play a game like CS or Dota with Eastern Europeans on a Friday evening, you will quickly realize that everything else is nothing compared to that unforgettable experience.
On one hand, you have these fucking deranged haters who make things up like this guy and just put it into the public domain as fact, and that's incredibly wrong to do. And then on the other hand, you have these like cultish fanboys who will say the exact opposite, will say nothing happened, he didn't do anything, like this is all completely incorrect, devoid of any context or nuance.
This is kinda true, but both of these groups sit on the opposite ends of the spectrum. In reality, there are plenty of people in the middle, I would probably even say the majority, who participate in testing or simply keep an eye on the project, waiting for the game to reach a state they would consider good enough for them. Even though I'm a content creator, which naturally means some people will poke at me from time to time, the overwhelming overwhelming majority of interactions I've had with other community members were completely civil. And I don't think it's fair to generalize or draw conclusions about the entire community because of a couple of idiots. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I genuinely think. Additionally, I wouldn't say the population of so-called white knights is large at this point. That used to be the case before Alpha 2, when there were no live servers and everyone had their own mental image of what the game would be. In fact, it's very similar to when a book gets adapted into a movie. If the book mentions a beautiful princess, every reader imagines their own version based on their personal taste. But the princess people see on the screen is not always considered beautiful by everyone. In any case, once Alpha 2 launched and we finally had an actual product to talk about, discussions within the core community became noticeably more meaningful and constructive.
What did Steven actually do? Well, basically, he ran a website in the early 2000s where he was selling a bunch of nutritional stuff, one of them being Zango. What is Zango? Zango is a company that is a problem, in my opinion. And if you had anything to do with this, you're not clean in any way.
Alright, let's move on to the topic that has apparently become a major source of discussion and speculation. In his video, Kira dedicated almost 10 minutes explaining the details and did a pretty solid job with the research. I think it's safe to assume that most of you watching this video have already seen his. If not, I will leave the link in the description and I highly recommend watching it first so that you have the full picture. I'm not going to play that entire segment here because I can't really add much to it and I'm honestly not sure whether it's going to be okay from the fair use perspective. Once again, please make sure to watch his breakdown so you have all the pieces of the puzzle. Now that you're hopefully back with the full context, I would like to highlight a few key points. Here's the first one.
What he says is when I was 18, I was recruited to join an MLM company called Zango. Who recruited him? His mother. His mother recruited him to Zango.
Keep this in mind for now. Next, Kira reached out to Steven and got his comment on the situation.
Now, for clarity's sake, when I asked Steven about him uplining people, aka recruiting them into the multi-level marketing business, Steven specifically said this. I did not recruit people, never appeared at conventions, never ran recruitment tools, and Zango sales made up less than 2% of my net worth. And Steven says people can dislike MLM's fair criticism, but the narrative that I, quote, sold cancer juice to dying children is malicious and factually false. Obviously, I never made that claim, and I'm never going to because that's not my opinion.
To add a bit more context, here's the comment Steven made 9 years ago where he clarified the situation. TLDR, he started a marketing business at the age of 15 and at 18 he began working with Zango. Another thing worth noting is this fragment from a different article. Why did it catch my attention? Because it's one thing to sell a single product and an entirely different story when you run a website selling dozens or maybe even hundreds of different items. To be clear, we don't know the exact number, but I hope you understand the point that I'm trying to make here.
That being said, Steven's mother was recruiting people, including him. There's claims of Steven being the upline, like the person who recruited somebody, who recruited somebody, who recruited somebody. As you can see here, your sponsor, your sponsor's sponsor, and then upline sponsor, whose name is Steven J. Sharif. Can I prove this to be true? Can I go back in time to fucking 2004 or whatever and find these people and talk to them? Probably not. But either way, his family was recruiting people, and there are claims that Steven was doing so as well, so make of that what you will.
Actually, credit to Kira for having the increasingly rare ability to draw a line between facts and assumptions. Going back to the topic, I found a comment under his video that might shed some light on this situation. But since I'm not an expert in this area, and I also prefer to clearly separate what I know from what I don't, I can't make any meaningful conclusion based on this particular comment. Anyway, let's move to the final part of this chapter before we can finally talk about Ashes of Creation.
The issue here is that to say Steven did this really bad thing, you've got to make assumptions. The first assumption would be he knew Zango was claiming the product did this thing and then actively played into the false advertisement to push the product to people who were then hoodwinked by the snake oil miracle drug. The second assumption is that he was indeed recruiting people. Again, I personally don't believe Steven as a personal opinion when he says he didn't, because I've seen video and heard voice recordings of his brother, his mother, recruiting people, as well as the post I showed you earlier. It would be odd for Steven to be recruited to an MLM by his family who recruit people and then himself not recruit people, despite being such a large part of what makes these people money. Especially since the video I showed you personally thanks him by name, as well as his family members for helping to upline her and her family, which means even if Steven wasn't going out of his way to recruit people, he was there as part of the family package when recruitment was ongoing. That being said, I can't say with certain fact he did know about Zango, and I can't say 100% factually he personally recruited people into this predatory business, or that at his age he even knew MLM was predatory. Also, he was a young man who was essentially pulled into this life by his mother. I don't subscribe to the opinion that I can brand somebody as a lifelong piece of shit scammer because they may have done something that I can't definitively prove like 20 years ago. No matter what, obviously MLMs are shitty, they're incredibly shady, and his family is deeply connected to those businesses. But there's simply not enough information out there to make crazy claims like he went out of his way to specifically try to scam people who were dying of cancer. That is fucking insane to say.
First of all, this is one of those situations where a lot of people will interpret what they hear in a way that supports their pre-existing beliefs, whatever those beliefs are, simply because of confirmation bias. Changing your point of view, especially if you've held onto it for a long time, often makes people uncomfortable because it implies admitting, at least to some extent, that they were initially misinformed, lied to, or just wrong. Additionally, without diving too deep into cognitive psychology, it's pretty common for people to look for the easiest way to eliminate uncertainty. This explains what we saw earlier, where some people form their entire opinions based on just a couple of Reddit comments. The only answer that seems rational and reasonable to me in this situation is, I don't know for a fact what exactly happened, since it's one word against another, and I can't make a meaningful conclusion unless more reliable information or evidence appears. Secondly, remember when I highlighted Kira mentioning that Steven was 18 and got recruited by his mother? Be honest, how many of you knew anything about MLMs at that age? How many of you would have understood what they were 15-20 years ago when the internet wasn't anywhere near as big as it is today? How many of you made mistakes when you were young? And how many of you, being an 18-year-old guy, would actually think twice if someone offered you a chance to make money, especially if that opportunity came from a figure of authority, assuming what Kira said is true? If you're new to my channel, let me ask you, do you get an impression that I'm just another white knight who's trying to defend Steven? If yes, that's fine. I'm not here to change your opinion, and in many cases, it will be impossible anyway. But if you think the rhetorical questions I just asked are a stretch, allow me to disagree. Take a look at the screenshot that Kira himself used in his video. This comment is a copy-paste, and unfortunately I didn't manage to find the original source, but let's assume it is legit and it is a mother telling a story about her son. Asked him about this drink that he knew nothing about, but said he could make $2,000 a week and get a much better car, that they really liked him and giving him a large sales territory, his hometown, with all his friends to sign up. Wow. What young teenage boy wouldn't take that deal? Sounds exactly like something a normal teenage boy would say, wouldn't you agree? 15 years ago, when I was 18, I wasn't any different and I wanted the same things. To be independent, to have a nice car, and to take girls out on dates. And you don't even need any exceptional cognitive empathy to understand this. Most of you are men who were once 18 as well. Obviously, not every action can be excused by age, but I think it's completely unfair to ignore this factor. Now we can finally put this topic to rest. For the record, everything I've said is accurate to the best of my knowledge, and none of it was intended to misrepresent anything, push a false narrative, or lie by omission. With that out of the way, it's time to talk about the game itself and its current state.
Now I guess let's actually talk about Ashes Creation, the game coming to Steam. For clarity's sake, I don't play Ashes of Creation. I have no fucking interest in playing this game. The reason I have no interest in playing this game is because I followed it for so long and did so much coverage on the game that I just got burnt out on yet another unreleased MMO.
This is a disclaimer that I genuinely appreciate. From time to time, we can see content creators trying to jump on a hype train and farm views of whatever drama is floating around Ashes of Creation, while having little to no idea what they're actually talking about. One of the recent examples of this was a video I stumbled upon on this channel. I don't know this channel, I have no idea who this guy is, despite him being relatively big. But the whole video consisted of reading several negative comments and a conclusion, it looks bad. Well, okay. great research and deep analysis, I guess. As for burnout, yes, that thing is very real. As someone who focuses exclusively on Ashes of Creation, I can confidently say that sometimes it gets tough, especially during periods when there are no major patches or updates. But this is the path I chose, so there is no point in complaining.
The big problem I have is, you'll remember Narc, right? Narc kind of went off the deep end, said some things I agree with, said some things I don't agree with, had some good points, had some fucking terrible points. But either way, some of the things Narc said, one of the things I absolutely agree with, he said, you can't trust Ashes of Creation creators, content creators. Anyone who makes Ashes of Creation videos, you cannot trust them. I agree with him. Any video from a content creator talking about Ashes of Creation, where they say use my referral code, you should treat that as if they said, I'm sponsored to make this video. So that's where I agree with Narc. The content creator program is a problem. If you're watching creators that have these codes, you should treat it as if it's like a sponsored puff piece, because it kind of has the same fucking attachments, right? The financial attachments and the biases.
Let's break it down and start with a full description of the referral program. After the release, Intrepid Bucks can be used to reduce the monthly subscription cost, purchase embers for cosmetics, or receive a direct payout. To provide full context, let's also take a look at Steven's perspective. He emphasized that the referral program is meant to cut marketing costs and save money that can instead be spent on development. Does that make sense? Personally, I don't see a strong reason to say it doesn't, but maybe you do, so feel free to share your perspective in the comments. In another article, Steven also states that the referral program is essentially the same concept as affiliate programs used by many online businesses, which is also not far from the truth. Since there might be a lot of people watching my video for the first time, and for the sake of transparency, let me make something clear. Have I ever mentioned my referral link? Yes, in my early videos. Do I do it now? No. At this point, it's simply sitting in the description. Have I ever tried to misrepresent the state of the game or overhype it just to trick people into using my referral link? Absolutely not, and I never will. Obviously, I don't expect you to trust me just because I said so, and you shouldn't, especially if you're new to the channel. What I do encourage you to do is check out my older and more recent reviews of Ashes and pay attention to what I say in the chapters about whether you should or shouldn't buy Alpha 2 access. And this brings us to the first main point. It is the knowledge about the project, the quality of the arguments, and the logic behind them that matter the most. However, what Kira said led to comments like this appearing under the videos made by Ashes content creators. And the funny part is, these people are not even expressing a conclusion they arrived at themselves. It's an outsourced opinion they repeat simply because someone else said it. They don't care what the video actually talks about, they just slap on a label, because when there is a choice between what is easy and what is right, not everyone picks the latter. For context, those comments were posted under this guy's latest video. His channel is not big, and in a little over 3 years he has gathered around 70k total views. Despite that, the guy actually knows what he is talking about, and his points in that video were genuinely solid. And if anyone seriously believes that he's secretly trying to make millions of a referral link, I'm sorry, but you're either trolling or you're just wrong. Yo, Lloyd, the next time we're gonna be chilling in our boats in Monaco, please don't forget to bring those Victoria's Secret models again, but this time please bring 24, cause 22 was not enough. Anyway, this brings me to the second point I want to highlight. There are content creators who have been covering Ashes for years. We've been here through all the ups and downs. Our channels are generally small, and for many of us, this is basically a hobby. Speaking for myself, if I had spent those thousands of hours on an actual IRL job instead of playing and covering Ashes of Creation, I would have made 100 times more money, without exaggeration. And it's no different for many others. When it comes to bigger content creators with larger audiences, and some of them will definitely check out Ashes sooner or later, the situation may be somewhat different. Nevertheless, remember what I said earlier. Focus on what they say instead of mindlessly putting labels on other people. The third point is a bit more subtle, but bear with me. Kira mentioned Narc and the fact that he wasn't using a referral link. And as a quick side note, if anyone genuinely believes that not using a referral link automatically makes you objective and unbiased, then I'm sorry, but you are an extremely easy target for manipulation. I don't use a referral link can be weaponized just as easily as anything else to create credibility. At the end of the day, we know how it all ended, and I don't think any additional explanation is required here. Also, I hope we all understand by now that drama and negativity sell extremely well. They generate more engagement, more clicks, and more views. And naturally, more views mean more ad revenue. Unlike the vague possibility of getting a referral payout in years if the game fully releases, YouTube ad revenue arrives quickly and reliably. Now, how can you tell whether a content creator is sharing their honest opinion, not simply drama farming or telling you exactly what they know you want to hear? This is my third point, but everything inevitably comes down to the same thing. Your intelligence, your logic, and your critical thinking are the only things standing between you and any attempt to manipulate you.
But eventually, once I started taking my responsibility, I guess, as a content creator, nobody gives a fuck. Doesn't win you any brownie points, nobody cares. People are still going to call you a liar and a shill and say you were paid for things anyway.
Exactly. Over time, one way or another, viewers will inevitably see a creator for who he really is and what he stands for. Meanwhile, the trolls and haters will always find a reason to talk shit about you. Even if you could walk on water, they would still accuse you of not being able to swim.
My problem is that a lot of those content creators signed up for this thing when they thought the game was going to be releasing in like 2 years' time, and a lot of them are owed money that is deflating in value. If you were owed $10 5 years ago, does that $10 have the same spending power as it will do in 3 or 4 or 5 years when this game releases? No.
First of all, nobody had to sign up for this. Literally everyone has a personal referral code in their account dashboard by default. Secondly, the terms were known from the very beginning, and it was entirely up to each player or content creator whether to use it or ignore it. Personally, as someone who has used it, I don't really care that much. I treat it as a potential bonus that I may or may not receive at some point in the future, and I know for a fact that I'm not the only one who sees it that way.
For the record, Steven did get back to me while I was waiting to upload this video, so I figured I'd drop in an edit. He did say, and I'll quote here, "While the statement was made specifically during Kickstarter and is specific to that audience," meaning people who backed on Kickstarter would get a refund if the game didn't launch, according to Steven, "if by some chance Ashes did not come to release, refunds would be considered for all backers. I would note that the game is very far along and the likelihood of not releasing is slim to none." So what he's saying is that everyone who backed on Kickstarter is guaranteed a refund, and that he would consider refunding people who'd backed on the website and of course through Steam if the game was to not release. As I'm saying this, Nemo's screaming in the background, so I don't think she believes it either, but this is what he's saying, so there you go.
For context, throughout all this time, players with Alpha 2 packs or keys had the option to receive a full refund within 90 days, regardless of how many hours they played. This is a fact that those who call Ashes a scam either don't know or conveniently choose not to mention. The only exceptions were situations where a player violated the TOS by doing things like cheating or RMT, which is obviously completely fair. At the same time, it's impossible to ignore the fact that some players abused this policy and requested a refund once or even several times after spending hundreds of hours in the game, simply because they could. Now, regarding Steven's statement, Kickstarter backers are guaranteed to receive a refund if the game never releases. For everyone else, he said it will be considered. For clarity's sake, I want to emphasize that considered means considered, not guaranteed. In the end, it's up to you to decide whether you believe Steven or not. Personally, I just hope we never end up in a situation where this scenario becomes real instead of hypothetical. But time will tell.
I don't know why they're doing this. As far as I can tell, they're not struggling for money because the company isn't laying off employees. They're not like downsizing. They appear to still be hiring. So I don't know if they're doing this because of like marketing or whatever, but I've been told they're doing it because they want more testers, which makes no fucking sense. I said this last time. They said, oh, we're selling the alpha now for fucking $100 or $125 or whatever it was. And they're doing it now because they want more testers. And My point was like, if you want more testers, fucking open the game up for free and you will get more testers. And I was told ad nauseum repeatedly by fans, fans of the game, that opening the game up for free would be bad, because the cheaper the game is, the more likely you get bad testers or testers that won't commit to the game. But now they're selling the game for $40 with a cash shop, and these apparently for much less money are not going to be lower quality testers. I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of contradictions here. There's a lot of things that don't make sense.
Okay, there is a lot to unpack here. To begin with, adding Ashes to Steam will bring a lot of new testers. That's a fact, and I don't think anyone will argue with that. In just the first 4 days, over 80,000 people added the game to their wishlist. A pretty solid number, especially considering there are still 3 more weeks until launch. Now, let me explain what's going to happen if you make the access free. First of all, people will be far less likely to do any research about the game. Why would they? There is no investment required, they can just download and try it. And of course, nobody's gonna pay attention to a dozen disclaimers saying it's an open development project, still in alpha, and very much unfinished. So the moment they run into the first bug, it's going to drive them crazy. They will rage quit and declare that the game is unplayable simply because it's not perfect. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I fucking wish I was. There are people who do not understand that this is not a traditional alpha and what they are signing for. We've seen that happening before, and mark my words, we'll see that again. Secondly, opening the gates for everyone will inevitably lead to a massive and barely controllable influx of players. This risks creating the same problem New World faced at launch. Thousands of players stuck in queues for hours. As a result, the studio had to react by opening a bunch of new servers, a decision that later backfired. 1 or 2 months after the initial hype died down, some of those servers became severely underpopulated. And while that wasn't a critical issue for New World, for Ashes of Creation, it could be lethal. Even though we currently have only about a quarter of the map available, the world is already huge. Not only would it feel empty, but many of Ashes core systems simply require a healthy server population to function as intended. And sure, servers can be merged, but that's a scenario you want to avoid at all cost. Finally, reducing the price from $100 to 0 will naturally piss off a lot of people who paid for Alpha 2 keys. This is a fact. Does someone become a better tester just because they paid more? No, of course not. But in case he decides to simply play the game for fun, their purchase generated some revenue for the studio. And whether the project is already funded or not, it still makes sense to reduce current expenses, which are substantial. Paying salaries to over 200 developers, maintaining an office in California, covering server costs, none of that is cheap. Realistically, it's very likely that the yearly expenses exceed $20 million.
This is going to be a nightmare. Like, this game is going to get absolutely fucked into the ground by negative reviews, rightfully so, because it's an alpha for a game that's been in development for 8+ years, charging money that for like a AAA game almost. Obviously, a lot of AAA games now are like $60, $70. But then also with a cosmetic cash up in a completely unfinished game, it's absolutely not ready for mass market gameplay. And I think this is going to hurt the project long term, because people are going to, again, rightfully so, put a lot of negative reviews on this and talk about it being a scam. And people are then going to look it up, and they're going to see comments like this calling Steven Sharif a fucking snake oil salesman scammer. And I think it's going to be bad.
I agree with Kira for the most part here. In my subjective opinion, I would prefer if they spend at least another 6 months cooking things internally before putting the game on Steam. However, I don't know the exact reasons behind that decision, so I can't confidently say whether it was justified or not. What I do know is that it's a bold move, and we're gonna find out soon enough how it all plays out.
And you can tell it's gonna be bad because even in the Ashes of Creation community, people are upset about this. The predominant, like, prevailing sentiment is, what the fuck are they doing? Like, why are they doing this? Is there money problems? Are they trying to like hoodwink people? Are they trying to get the New World population in here to earn some extra cheddar? What's going on? Because the game's absolutely not ready. Like, if the fans of the game, these are the biggest hardcore fans of the game, are saying this, it's a problem.
This is true. Nobody expected this, and the announcement hit the community like a bolt from the blue. Some players are staying optimistic, but most, myself included, are genuinely worried about how things might turn out. However, there is still time, and the devs are putting in the work and running regular test sessions on the PTR.
People shouldn't have been giving this game $500 for alpha keys. People shouldn't have been buying the many thousands of dollars of cosmetics for this game that's not finished yet. This is not a thing people should have been doing, in my opinion, in my mind.
I understand the point Kira is making here, and I do agree with it, but to be accurate, I would probably rephrase it this way. Not everyone will get enough fun out of the game to justify the money they spent. At the same time, I think people should be free to spend their money however they want or however they feel right.
Steven said repeatedly, I'm fully funding the project myself 100%, I don't even need your money. And yet goes out of his way to sell a bunch of like FOMO cosmetics and now a cash shop in a fucking unreleased game on well, technically released and in my mind completely.
Okay, brace yourself since I'm about to drop an unpopular opinion that many people probably will hate me for. Since I'm not really looking for anyone's approval and just speaking my mind, it is what it is. I already shared my opinion on this topic before, both in my videos and on streams, but here we go again. I absolutely do not accept or tolerate the whole FOMO argument that some people bring up from time to time. If you understand what FOMO is and the way it works, you can't complain about it. It's not an excuse for making decisions you shouldn't have made and then blaming FOMO afterwards. I know the concept of being responsible for your own actions sounds pretty wild in 2025, but I find this behavior fucking childish. It's not that different from seeing a bottle of wine in a store, drinking yourself into the ground, and then blaming the store for selling it to you. If you are an adult, act like one and use your brain. The last time I checked, it was still free.
I'm going to treat this game as if it's done, by the way. Like, I'm going to cover the game when it goes onto early access on Steam, and I'm going to treat it like a fully released game. Why am I going to do that? Because it fucking is at this stage. If you're selling cosmetics in your live service game, I'm going to treat your game as if it's done, and I'm going to review it without the fucking kid gloves of, oh, it's still an alpha. No, it's a paid product that you're charging people for that you're monetizing, and that's how everybody should look at it.
This is one of the points Kira made that I not only disagree with, but consider to be absolutely wrong, and honestly, this is the hill I would die on. If you model two scenarios, one where the cosmetic shop exists and another one where it doesn't, the game essentially does not change. It would still be an unfinished game in an alpha state with at least a year and a half or two before release. Like, hello? The same logic applies if Intrepid suddenly announced tomorrow that the cosmetic shop won't be available. Literally nothing in the actual game changes and it would remain exactly the same. Sure, players who care about skins would be unhappy, but that's a completely different story. And look, I would absolutely agree with this point if we were talking about pay-to-win items, level boost, or some other garbage. But we are talking about skins, items that do not affect gameplay in any way and that nobody is forced to buy. So I genuinely do not understand how the simple existence of a cosmetic shop somehow should make people treat an alpha like a finished product. That logic just doesn't add up. If Kira wasn't relatively reasonable throughout the video, my first assumption would have been that he said this intentionally to set up his next Ashes of Creation review. Since it's really not hard to find things to criticize at this stage of development, it would be an easy video with disaster or failure on the thumbnail. Basically a certified told you moment. Honestly, I was very confused when he said what he said because there's like no way he doesn't realize it's wrong.
And I know Steven at the moment is not doing super well with criticism because you can see here a lot of armchair developers going on here with the full embrace of Dunning-Kruger effect to boot. I get people are not happy with their expectations of phase 3, blah blah blah. What I want to highlight is somebody prominent in the community responded to him and said, brother, let's not forget it's your first time doing this. With all due respect, you are in fact still learning, and while we are here with you on it, you can't come at people like that, especially in your own Discord. You, not us, chose the open development model. Love heart. Reasonable thing to say that maybe years ago would have been met with silence at the minimum, or like, yeah, you're right. Steven banned this guy and responded, I can actually love heart, and banned him from the server for what he just posted. He did get unbanned, and the guy said all matters were settled, blah blah blah. Grace was extended in both directions. We move forward amicably. But you can tell, like, this wouldn't have happened years ago, and Steven is probably getting bogged down in the you know, the weight of the community, so to speak, especially with now people turning on him. And this is obvious.
We went over this situation on stream, but let me quickly go through it again. For context, here is the full message Steven wrote. Do I have any problems with it? I don't, because it is factually true. People share their ideas and suggestions, some of them get considered, some of them get filtered out. Naturally, a few people take it very personally and start accusing Intrepid of not caring about feedback, which simply isn't true. Then we have Nightshade's message. Do I have a problem with it? No, I don't fully understand what he meant by "you can't come at people like that," but in any case, I don't think there were any bad intentions behind what he said. So, was the ban justified? Absolutely not. I'm glad Nightshade got unbanned and that the situation ended the way it should have. However, there is one subtle nuance I want to highlight because I do not agree with the conclusion Kira makes based on this particular case. So, there is a thing called fundamental attribution error, which is a cognitive bias that makes us judge people for their mistakes and immediately assign negative traits to them, often ignoring the context behind the situation. It's obvious that the amount of pressure Steven is dealing with right now is massive. Managing a large studio, facing constant accusations and misinformation, dealing with health issues, all of that is extremely stressful. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to justify a ban. It was obviously a wrong decision. But context always matters. We are so quick to judge others, but we rarely enjoy it when it's our turn to be on the receiving end.
A lot of the content creators that started covering Ashes, they're all gone. They've all made their exit videos saying essentially fuck Ashes, we're done. The game is doing X, Y, and Z wrong, don't agree with these decisions, and moved on. A lot of them are just not around anymore, and this will continue to happen. This is what's happening in the community with players as well. And years of this is going to get you down. I know this because I've fucking dealt with it as a YouTuber for 5 years. It's not for everybody. And in fact, even the most fucking robust of personalities will absolutely be impacted by this.
This is correct. Not all content creators left or decided to take a break, but many of them did. We already spoke about the burnout, and yeah, it's real.
The game releasing on Steam, expect for this and what you're experiencing, the negativity within the community, the negativity to personally Steven, is going to magnify by 1,000-fold. This is not going to release to like positive reviews. This is not going to release to a bunch of people reasonably coming in and saying, oh, I've looked at this, it's a very nuanced topic and here's my balanced opinion as an adult. They're going to come in, they're going to say, what the fuck have I just paid for? This is dog shit. Oh my god, it's a scam.
This is a very likely scenario. Unfortunately, no matter how many disclaimers will there be on Steam, a lot of people will treat the game like a finished product and then get mad when they realize it's not. On top of that, some of them will ignore Ash's content creators just because of the referral link somewhere, instead of listening to people who actually know what they're talking about. And if you pay attention, literally all of us are saying the same thing. Do not buy it now unless you 100% understand what you're getting yourself into.
They're going to be using Steam's refund policy for this game. So previously, if you bought Ashes of Creation, you could get a very reasonable refund for the game after testing enough of an MMORPG, an unfinished MMORPG. But they're going to be using the Steam one if you buy on Steam. So some fucking Timmy is going to load up Steam and be like, oh, new MMORPG, I've just quit New World because New World's fucked and closing down. I'll buy this. Oh, it's a bit rough early, but you know, it's an MMO. I've got to play at least 50 hours to figure out whether or not I like it. And then they're going to get like 5 or 6 hours in and be like, this is fucked. It's buggy. It's fucking unfinished. There's not enough content. I don't like the game. Go to get a refund and they can't. And they've spent $40+. They're going to open it up and look at the cash shop and see all the skins for an unfinished game. Then they're going to Google Ashes of Creation. Who makes Ashes of Creation? Look at the social media posts. Oh, Steven Sharif. He's a scammer. He's this, he's that. He's the biggest piece of shit in the world. This is all going to go badly. I've seen this a million times. This is exactly what's going to happen. It's a bad idea. The amount of short-term money you're going to get from this is absolutely not going to fucking compensate for the amount of negativity that's going to come from this, in my opinion.
I literally laughed my ass off when I heard the story about Timmy's adventure. I didn't laugh for too long though, because the way Kira described it is not far from the reality. However, I do hope the average Timmy at least knows about Steam's refund policy. What I don't expect him to realize is that figuring out whether you will or won't enjoy an MMORPG usually takes much longer than trying a single player game. And honestly, the same can be said for many, if not all MMOs. In the case of Ashes of Creation, Timmy will at least be able to come back later when the game enters the beta phase or when it's fully finished, since purchasing the game on Steam includes 1 month of subscription time at release. I do plan to make a detailed video soon that will hopefully help you make an informed decision, so stay tuned for that.
When this game releases on Steam, I will absolutely make a review video. I'll play the game, I'll give it all the fucking... I'll go in with an open mind, a blank slate, and I'll really try my best to be objective about it and look at the game for what it is. But who knows, maybe the game's much better than I've been led to believe, and I'm going to come out and say, oh, actually, if it gets much better than this, it'll be amazing, but it's already great, and it's already worth the box price right now, and actually, the cosmetics in the cash shop are fine. This is all okay for an unreleased game. I doubt it, but there we go.
I'm actually very curious to see his review and hear the perspective of someone outside the core community jumping into the game. Since he'll be stepping into the world of Verra after a long break, I genuinely wish him luck.
Overall, this comes down to a simple question at the end of it. Is Ashes of Creation a scam? I don't think so personally. There's tons of people working at the company being paid to make what they believe to be the next big MMORPG. Even if we could prove that Steven is all the bad things that people say he is on social media, that still wouldn't make the game suddenly turn into a scam. But I do feel like it's important to point out, I don't like a lot of what Steven does with Ashes. I think it makes no sense at all when Steven claims they don't need money, it's totally funded, and then at every turn try to nickel and dime the community with FOMO cosmetics and hundreds of dollars on alpha and beta access. I think Steven tried to cash in on the Battle Royale hype with Apocalypse all those years ago, and he's now trying to cash in on the heat death of the MMORPG world with this Steam release. I don't think the overall development of the game is a scam, as many people on social media do. Nor do I think Steven's the worst person on the planet who did all these horrible things, because we simply can't know unless there's some evidence out there I'm unaware of. I do understand if people don't trust him because of his days in an MLM and his family's background, that's a reasonable opinion, but there are plenty of things to actually criticize Ashes and Steven for that have nothing to do with his past and everything to do with the game currently after so many years of development, the rhetoric around game funding, the constant selling of stuff in an unreleased game, the content creator program, and much, much more.
To summarize, as I said at the start, this video actually exceeded my expectations, and a lot of the takes Kira made are reasonable. There are some I disagree with, and a few I strongly disagree with, but that's fine. At the end of the day, we are all just gamers, hoping to have more good games to play. If this video was interesting, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'm Flanker, and I'll see you soon.